Hello everyone. Sorry about that. Different streaming setup. I'll be sure to edit that out in post. But welcome back to Tomlinson Talks for Thursday, 12th of February, 2026. Sorry that you're getting me at slightly low energy today for a few reasons. Number one, I've got a dreadful head cold. I think it's that time of year, but also stress. Number two, it has been a harrowing week. Partially because yesterday I participated in Rupert Lowe's privately funded rape gang inquiry, giving some insight into the racial and religious motivations of the gangs, given my reporting from the last couple of years, but also looking at the intersection between international Islamic organized crime and people smuggling, and providing not just participants in the gangs, bringing them into Britain, but also potentially trafficking the girls overseas to become sex slaves in Pakistan and across the Middle East. It's the most horrific stuff you'll ever hear, and there's more horrific stuff to come out. So, if you haven't already supported the inquiry and its efforts, please do share their findings if you still have a social media account, if you haven't deleted it in order to become a reform candidate. And to those of you, I say us, because I, full disclosure, also donated to the inquiry well ahead of being asked to be involved in it. If you haven't already donated to their efforts and you still can, then I encourage you to do so. But those that have, well done, because they're doing necessary work that nobody else is courageous enough to do. And the other reason it's been a harrowing week is because every single day it feels like a new migrant sex crime or murder hits the headlines. I know all of you feeling quite worn down by this, because it feels like a belt sander has been taken to the collective soul of the country. And we had one of our elites break rank this week. He has since cucked and apologised, which is very disappointing. But this is Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who's one of the Man United owners, and he has said that Britain feels as if it's been colonised by immigrants. And he was saying in reference to 12 million people coming in since the year 2000, he mistakenly said 2020, but he's accurate that at least 12 million people have come in since the year 2000, and we are paying, again, at least £1 billion a month on benefits for foreign nationals. Not a single person should be in this country whose presence is subsidised by the British taxpayer who never wanted them here in the first place. And Duncan Bannatyne came out and backed him. John Cleese has been sharing lots of stuff about Rupert's inquiry. You're starting to see a drip feed of the men who are concerned about the state of the country they are imparting off onto their children and grandchildren. You're starting to see the rich grandfathers of the nation no longer incensed by the sort of Peter Hitchens view of the world that says, just leave, it's all lost. And instead of just speaking their minds because they have nothing left to lose. The country's already in an appalling state. And it's hard to say that he's wrong, especially when immigrants from the Indian subcontinent and Jamaica constantly brag about mass migration being a form of reverse colonialism and punishment for the British Empire. But also, it seems the government doesn't even disagree with him at this point, because new stats from the Office for National Statistics have found that every ethnic group except white, and that's of course a racial category, but this is how they break it down, are net tax recipients in Britain. Now, we don't measure the quality of a person and whether or not they belong in our families or our homes or our countries necessarily by the amount of GDP they generate, right? What we base it on is, are they our friends? Are they our family members? Do they contribute to the cultural texture and the feeling of belonging in the nation? But it takes some gall to go over a country and demand to have your housing be subsidised by the native occupants of that country who never voted to bring you in the first place. And the natural feeling that our homes have been colonised is exacerbated by the fact that we can see who is taking the benefits, right? I mean, we can just see that a disproportionate number of people who never needed to be here in the first place are just taking all of our money with record high tax rates and public services diminishing in quality and availability. And so it builds that groupish resentment among native Brits versus the conspicuous number of Indians and Africans and Middle Easterners they see milling about in the high streets. I mean, my high street, which has usually been an Anglo biosphere on the cusp of London, has been getting measurably worse over the last year. It's very dispiriting. You know, my wife and I want to have kids this year, and we're worried about the kind of social environment they'll be brought up in, where they will be a minority in their own country. My church is a lovely place, but every week there is a children's liturgy, and we happen to notice that this week there was only one English child in the entire liturgy. Now, those parents seem like nice people, but I don't want to be a minority in my own country, and I don't want to pay for the privilege of it. It's important, by the way, that World by Wolf, who is one of my adoring clip farmers, who I hope is watching, does excellent work, actually corrected this graph, because if you happen to notice, white is in red and is below the line, whereas all of the others are in blue and above the line, which makes it look like the immigrant groups are the net contributors, right? It's actually the complete inverse. White ethnic groups, and that doesn't just mean white British, that also means Europeans and other white immigrants from America, Australia, are net contributors. And that's, of course, despite them being born here and educated here and having longer life expectancies, so taking out more in pensions and end-of-life medical and nursing home care. So that's pretty impressive. And the other groups as well, when you see Asian, I mean, they're subsidized by the Chinese and the Japanese, the few of those that are still mad enough to come to Britain and live here rather than Japan, a veritable paradise. So all the other groups, I mean, they're far from pulling their weight. They are the anchor sinking this great country. And even if it weren't just a fiscal problem, we have endless amounts of crimes. Endless amounts of crimes. I mean, the first crime that lots of them commit is, of course, breaking into the country. So there have been more illegal migrants that have broken into the country under Keir Starmer than any other previous Prime Minister. Now, legal migration is just as dangerous. It's the same people that just come in via the passport gates of Heathrow and Gatwick, and having a visa or a passport does not make those people any different. They don't leave their cultural baggage and ethnic prejudices at the airport. However, it is important to note that for all of the promises of smash the gangs, which pretty much everyone with a functioning frontal cortex knew was a lie, Keir Starmer has overseen the invasion of our country. By the way, I can see super chat in the live chat. I have TTS enabled, but I will wait until the end of the stream to play any of those. So super chats, questions, comments that you would like to be read out, and hopefully the audio is fixed this time. Get them in ahead of time, and I'll go through them at the end, especially because the subject matter is not particularly appropriate to be addressing super chats of other topics. Anyway, 219 migrants reached the UK on Sunday. So the number of recorded small boat crossings, bear in mind they probably miss a few, plus lorries, plus illegal visa overstays, under Keir Starmer has hit 65,922, overtaking the previous high of 65,811 under Boris Johnson of Boris Wave fame. That record has been reached in just 19 months compared to 3 years under Boris Johnson. This is the 9th year of this now. The number of migrants who have reached Britain now stands at more than 193,000. That is larger than the British Army. That is at its lowest levels of reservists since the Napoleonic War, and bear in mind, most of those military personnel will not be frontline fighting forces who are armed and ready should a crisis strike. Those are only a few thousand. We are stacking up our own funeral pyre. And I say we, sorry, I mean the treacherous politicians who lead this country against the wishes of the native population, who want them to stop this, who want it reversed, who have never voted for it. I mean, just look at these graphs, they're appalling. According to the one-in, one-out policy that Labour have passed, that allows us to send migrants back to France, Siobhan Mahmood has said 367 migrants have been brought into the UK under the reciprocal treaty, only 305 have been removed. So we're proactively taking in more than we're removing under the government's removal scheme. There are things that I just can't say because we don't live in a free country, but the anger, the contempt I feel towards the hostile foreign power currently sitting in number 10 Downing Street and across Parliament. If I express it, it'll get me thrown in prison. Fortunately, we have someone who has lost so much to express it for us, and that would be the mother of Rhiannon Skye-Whyte. Now, if you don't remember Rhiannon's case, her killer, Deng Chol Majek from Sudan, her remorseless killer who lied about his age, who celebrated her murder by buying alcohol and hosting a dance party in his migrant hotel, who was so low IQ he thought the police sirens were flashing lights joining him in his party. Well, he's now been imprisoned, so he's going to be imposed as a cost upon the British taxpayer for the rest of his conceivable life. Because for some reason we don't hang these people. Thank you, Labour Party, for abolishing the death penalty back in the 60s. So, Miss White's family described Majek, who you can see here, this dead-eyed, barely even human criminal. Miss White's family described Majek as demonic and inhuman. The pain and suffering we have experienced since the horrific attack is something we still have to address every day, and I cannot see a time when this will not be the case. White's sister told the court that Majek had carried out a vicious and pitiless assault on a terrified and defenseless young woman who he claims never to have spoken to or noticed. I believe the rumour was that she had intervened in a fight between him and another migrant over a packet of biscuits and he felt disrespected. He then stalked her to a train station and stabbed her 23 times with a screwdriver, 19 times in the head, while she was begging him to stop. She leaves her son behind. So the reason we're going through all this is because there is a relentless pattern of these crimes committed by men who never needed to be here, and therefore none of these crimes needed to happen. And it's a miserable topic, but I just want to keep covering to remind you, they're doing this to us as a choice. All these men are here as a consequence of government policy, of state activity. And so, this is state-facilitated colonization. And the racial resentments, the sexual prejudices underlying these crimes, mean that this is a form of ethnocidal colonization. Let's not mix our terms here. And this is not just in the behaviour of the perpetrators of these crimes, but in what they say and do, as we'll get to later on from some of the revelations from Rupert's inquiry, which we'll cover more comprehensively next week in its own stream. Her sister said, her name will not be forgotten, she will not be a distant memory. We'll keep her alive in our memory. You, however, are an evil nightmare that will be put aside, known only for your cruel and malicious act. Unfortunately, I don't think he cares. You brutalised Rhiannon, and then partied as if nothing had happened. Miss White's mother, Donna, also gave a statement in court, telling Majek, let me see you dancing now. Absolutely evil. As you can see here, this soulless creature, who looks like an enemy combatant in a video game, just walks straight back in the hotel after killing Rhiannon. It says, Majek, who is 10 inches taller than White, walked to the Coldmore Green area of Walsall after the attack by beer and was recorded wiping blood from his trousers. He then returned to the hotel at 13 minutes past midnight, changed his blood-stained flip-flops for trainers, and was seen laughing and dancing. Also, it turns out, by the way, Majek lied about his age. And he broke into the country 3 months before the attack. So, Siobhan, also goes by Donna, was invited on GB News and asked about the murder. And she didn't mix her words about the culpability of Keir Starmer in her daughter's death. I think we'll allow her to speak for herself here.
And how do you, I mean, the impact on your family, and especially seeing as you were put through the court case, because it's not even a person, this piece of filth that did this to your daughter, he made you sit in court, he didn't admit that he'd done anything wrong despite the evidence, he made you and your family go through another hell.
He's lied consistently. He even called the forensics liars. He said that wasn't him, it wasn't me. It's obvious, it was his clothes, it was his physique, it was him.
Was this guy, is he mentally ill, do you think? Was
No,
he drunk?
he's been deemed sane. he was deemed sane.
So this was...
It was just a psychopath who just decided that...
He wasn't drunk, he wasn't on drugs.
No, he went and got drink after the incident, hence him dancing.
I don't wish to be mean to Eamon Holmes here, but the insistence of trying to clarify, was he intoxicated? No. He is a low IQ predator from a country where the age of marriage, I think, is 9 or 10. You don't understand these people, Eamon. They're not mentally ill. At least, not by our definition. They're not intoxicated. They're not even ideologically driven. They just hate us. They're driven entirely by their perverse impulses. And they are at least 1,000 years behind us in terms of civilization. If not more, because we were not this brutal in the pre-Middle Ages. You don't understand them. And there is no mitigating circumstance. There is just the aggravating factor of racial hatred, thousands of years of cousin marriage, and thinking you're entitled to take what you want when you want from the weakest among us. Especially if they're white women and girls. Anyway.
And how did you... I mean, I've watched that, and obviously I didn't know your daughter, but I watched that and I got so angry, Siobhan. He went back to the hotel.
Yeah.
He was partying after murdering your daughter.
Literally within the hour. Because you could see the blue lights still there. Literally within the hour.
But when you look at these pictures here...
Yeah, he hadn't spoken to anyone prior. That's obvious. He hadn't spoken to anyone prior. And now all of a sudden he's up there dancing. He's celebrating, dancing on my daughter's grave.
Literally.
And you said after the court case, are you happy with the verdict, by the way? Are you happy with the sentence?
I am happy. It will never be enough.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to be honest, if the death penalty was in, I would get him up straight away. But it will never be enough, but he will never be out to hurt anybody else.
Siobhan, I should say to you, you say you would vote for the death penalty. Don was here live on GB News last Friday night when the verdict came through. And there was just huge support, wasn't there?
So many messages for you and your family, and so many people so incredibly angry. Anger, I think, in your situation is a positive emotion. Who are you angry at and why?
Starmer, the government, for allowing this to happen. There's so many cases that are brushed under the carpet. We have sat quiet for 15 months for Rhiannon's sake, because I wanted justice. We're not a family that are going to go and kick off. What's the point? Starmer needs to be held accountable. If it was his family, Sadiq Khan, if it was their family, this wouldn't happen. You know, this needs to stop. I mean, there's cases of poor men, poor children, women being raped, attacked, beaten, murdered on a daily basis. And it's not genuine asylum seekers, it is illegals. We don't know who they are. We don't know what diseases they've got. And half the time I don't think they know who they are, but they're still allowing them in.
Well, the Home Office will say they share your grief and they share your anger, and they say the murder of Rhiannon was an abhorrent crime. Our thoughts are with their loved ones. This vile criminal is behind bars where he belongs, and he has rightly received the strictest punishment of a life sentence. We share the public's anger about the broken asylum system and hotels. That is precisely why we are doing everything we can to keep dangerous offenders out of the country and close down hotels.
Siobhan, what's your response to that?
But why is it still happening? Why hasn't something been done before? Because Rhiannon's not the first case, and sadly she won't be the last. But we were handed a life sentence today. I had to watch my daughter die. Yeah. And where is Starmer? He's got blood on his hands.
Have you heard...
Impossible to disagree with her. Impossible. And she was right. Of course she was right, because the government are not keen to do anything. When they close hotels, they just stick them in houses of multiple occupancy. And of course, Danny Finkelstein's sister, who was the senior civil servant at DEFRA and has now moved into a senior policy role in the civil service, her department has overseen plans to diversify the countryside. So presumably everyone's going to get their share of illegal migrant enrichment. Just general immigration enrichment under Operation Scatter in the foreseeable future. And Siobhan was correct, because we have now got a relentless number of cases that just keep being reported. For example, this horrific case that was only finished 2 days ago. So an Afghan asylum seeker in Nuneaton, he's one of two, has been found guilty of abducting and raping a 12-year-old girl from a park when she was playing on the swings. He then used our money, taxpayers' money, to go and buy snacks after he was done. That's Ahmad Mulakil, 23 years old, took her to a cul-de-sac on the 22nd of July and carried out extremely horrific sexual offences. He was found guilty of rape, abduction, sexual assault, and taking an indecent video of the girl. They're filming it, so they're proud of it. This is a pattern we're going to see, by the way. This is in more than one crime now. They're filming it. This is ritual humiliation and torture for them. They know what they're doing. His co-defendant, Mohammed Kabir, also an Afghan asylum seeker, was found not guilty of strangulation, attempted child abduction, and attempting to commit a sexual offence. Wild, because they were walking around together on CCTV. Are we just to expect that, you know, they were right near the park? The other guy just had no idea what was going on. Really? One guy got away with it. Took 10 days. Mulakil laughed while he was attacking the 12-year-old girl. This prompted the protests in Nuneaton, because the details were not reported by the authorities when they were arrested. He arrived in a small boat from France in March 2025, 4 months before he raped the girl. This was not one of the Afghans brought here by Ben Wallace, and yes, Robert Jenrick. Last Conservative government have a lot to answer for by bringing in Afghans. I think actually Afghans and Pakistanis are currently competing to be the most hated immigrant group in all of Britain. And it will be interesting to see which one of them, by the end of this live stream you'll understand why, is the first community to be expelled. Because the crimes are so frequent and covered up by said communities, so collectively, that just policing their behaviour on an individual basis will look like a collective punishment. Anyway, the victim told the trial she was approached in the park by both defendants after playing on the swing, so why was the other guy allowed off with it? During the attack, she told him to stop. Asked by police what he was saying, she responded nothing, he was just laughing. I was saying, "Get off me." He didn't say anything, he just carried on. He said to the police he believed the girl was 19 and she had initiated what was his first sexual encounter. As we'll repeatedly see from the rape gang trial transcripts as well, there is always an attempt to blame the girls for being precocious and promiscuous. These people are disgusting. They just want to attack your children. They shouldn't be here. They should never be here. None of them should be here. We can just send them all home. Inarguable. As Mary Harrington tweeted, we want them gone. All of them. Out. Just gone. Just gone. Not the only one. There's another girl, age 13, who was raped by an asylum seeker after being lured to the hotel while another man stood guard outside the room. Teenage girl was meeting with her friends in Hull when she encountered Shahram Ibrahimi, 19 at the time, and Riley Smith, who was 18. This is Ibrahimi. This is Riley Smith. Now, as we'll hear, because this is quite an unusual case, right, to have an English collaborator in a migrant rape. As we'll hear, Mr. Smith is involved, previously, from his convictions, in county lines drug dealing. So, this traitor, this ethnic traitor, seems to have been involved, presumably because it's Hull, in the ethnic drug cartels that then facilitate the Pakistani rape gangs. If these people were not here, you also would not be enabling freaks like this that are already in our midst. Ibrahimi is an Iranian asylum seeker. We keep hearing about how they are totally oppressed and deserve our unyielding support. Well, it turns out even the men fleeing the evil Iranian regime are just their detritus. He came to the UK aged 17. They all claim to be 17. Does he look 17 to you? We're not allowed to check for that, of course. Smith from Grimsby, living in Hull at the time, invited her to go around the town with them. The girl told Ibrahimi and Smith she was 13, telling them to go away, calling them both pedos. Accurate. Men persisted with their attempt to lure her. The girl left with her friends and drank 3/4 litre of vodka mixed with cherry coke, leaving her unable to walk in a straight line. Parent your children. Do not allow them to go out like this, drinking with their friends, underage, when there are these types of predators lurking around. Just a public service announcement. It's not the girl's fault. The parents should have been supervising her, but it's not their fault that she was raped by this man. It's the fault of the government. But in lieu of the government taking care of us, take care of your kids. The two men then met the teenager later that evening before luring her to the hotel, where she was raped by Ibrahimi as Smith acted as a lookout. He stood in the corridor, and as someone heard, he kept telling her to hurry up, because a staff member heard Smith open the door and heard the girl in pain. Ibrahimi, who'd been looked after in immigration-based accommodation, admitted to the rape. His father paid people smugglers to take him due to danger in his homeland. I actually think that an Iranian rapist should be in danger in whatever country he's in. He's now locked up for 9 years and 7 months, so he's our problem. Smith, of no fixed address, was jailed for 7 years. Hang them both. Bring back the death penalty, hang them both. Again, not the only example. There's now an Egyptian who came across on a small boat who is now begging not to be deported, saying he should be punished in our country. Actually, I don't think we should pay for his deportation. I don't think we should pay for his jail cell. Again, I think we should bring back the death penalty. And you don't get to pick your punishment after you do what you did. This is Eid Anwar Fatih Najjar, 21, who crossed the English Channel on a small boat from Egypt, targeting his victim in York. She became separated from her friends after spending the evening drinking in a nightclub. Now, this is a pattern that will emerge. We have seen lots of nightclub abductions from Afghans and Syrians and now Egyptians of women who are too intoxicated to understand their whereabouts. We saw one in Exeter. We saw one in Cardiff. And this is now in York. And the reason they're getting these ideas is because, remember, as I've reported on before, men are being lured to the UK via people smuggling gangs with footage of women recorded without their knowledge and consent. And this has been uncovered recently, is still going on, despite the government's promise to crack down on it, meeting with executives from Meta and TikTok on the 1st of April 2025, who said, oh, we'll use our algorithm to ban that content. Turns out that there is a ethnic group that spread across India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan that are now marketing to one another using TikTok. Videos of girls, again, in clubs or on university campuses, promising these men that if you come to Britain, this is the student life that awaits you. The women are just willing and waiting for Indian men, Pakistani men, and Afghans to snatch them up right off the street. And they're far more promiscuous and dressed far more provocatively than the women in your country. These are the promises made to these men. They telegraph their intent ahead of time. So the only presumption we can make is that the majority of small boats being men, is that those crossing the channel intend on sexually violating women and girls in Britain. That is their express purpose for coming to Britain, and so they are enemy combatants. Anything should be permissible to stop this. Anything. But our treacherous government don't want to do that, and instead they want to stockpile them in HMOs and hotels near your children's schools. And we know this is still going on, by the way, because the BBC actually did an investigation into this the other day. These are men still running YouTube channels and social media accounts monetizing women being filmed without their knowledge or consent. The ones that they unveiled here in this particular investigation were a pair of Romanians. Not Romanians, Albanians, sorry. This is Florjan Reka and his brother Roland. So they were living in Sweden, but they are Albanians. So yet again, part of the international Muslim organised crime trade. They were filming girls in Manchester over Halloween. As you can see, there's loads of footage here marketed as nightlife, and it just so happens to be random girls dressed in revealing outfits marketed to Muslims and men from the third world. The BBC found 50 women who'd been filmed and found they were unaware of what had happened. They expressed feelings of fear and humiliation, as they were entitled to do so. The BBC identified more than 65 online channels of this type of content, whose videos have been collectively viewed more than 3 billion times over the past 3 years. They focus on London, Oslo, Miami, and Bangkok, but one of the most popular locations is Manchester. The team went undercover and found some of the most prolific operators linked to 12 accounts. This included a local taxi driver. As we know, the taxi firms are common trafficking apparatuses for the Pakistani rape gangs. Other channels claim they're based in Norway and Monaco, were spotted filming, but were not able to confirm their identities. This is a marketing arm for the international people trafficking trade that is promising to the men of the Indian subcontinent and the Middle East that our girls are the spoils of conquest. That is why they keep coming here. And this is why we now have plenty of videos of men just trying to snatch these women up. Look, they've got their arms around them, they're clearly drunk, they're clearly in a state of diminished awareness. And if we look at the patterns of dating and whether or not they have an interracial preference, there is a very low preference among white women for these kinds of men. And when they're confronted, they're just saying, "Oh, it's all fine, bro, it's all fine, bro," as they're picking their nose and rolling it around in their hand like disgusting animals. These men shouldn't be here. They should be deported. Deportation is a kindness. Remigration is the moderate option for these kind of absolute freaks. And the government, instead, not only encourages them to come here with new Indian work visas, but also knows that this entire trafficking trade is operating, because they knew about it in 2023 when I broke the story with GB News and the Lotus Eaters. And they not only do nothing, they continue to do nothing. They pretend like they're sending these men back, but they know it's going on, and instead they censor people who speak out about it. They want this to happen. This is a form of colonization. Sexual predation on native women by immigrant men. It is a form of racially motivated violence. The government know it's going on and they do nothing to stop it. Keir Starmer knows it is happening and he postures about preventing it, but then, when people speak about it, like Sir Jim Ratcliffe, he comes out with swift condemnation. He is swifter to condemn rhetoric by a football club owner than he is to prevent the rape of women and children by men who never needed to be here. Understand the hierarchy we are operating under in our own country. Then there's another migrant, yet again, who blames girls in Britain for their comparably immodest, by Muslim standards, dress sense. Sexually preying on a 12-year-old girl. 70-year-old migrant, Chowdhury Zaman, Pakistani, and he hasn't been jailed for this. He needed a Punjabi interpreter in court. Deport the interpreter, frankly. At this point, it just shouldn't be here. Shouldn't be here. This shouldn't be a problem. We shouldn't have to put up with any of this. He held the 12-year-old girl's hand while she was walking home from school in Slough and then kissed her. The court heard the girl lost friends in her community after she came forward to make the allegation. Judge Amjad Nawaz, who spared him jail. There shouldn't be a single foreign judge. There shouldn't be a single foreign MP. There shouldn't be a single foreign member of the civil service. There shouldn't be a single foreign police officer. No person of foreign extraction should be able to hold a position of authority in the British state. There are too many conflicts of interest. There is too much clannishness. There is too much ethnic nepotism. You will always have two-tier justice so long as British people, who are individualistically minded and still have some residual Christian feeling, do not run everything in their own country. The judge also admits, you were seen sitting on a bench with her, and that is where she said you kissed her on the lips. You claimed you were speaking to her and asking her, encouraging her to cover her head, and you were trying to tell her how she should cover her head. So, he preyed on a 12-year-old girl because she was insufficiently Islamic. Again, I'm usually very rhetorically lucid, but the rage keeps interrupting my thought patterns here. Judge Nawaz decided not to jail Zaman, agreeing with the author of the pre-sentence report that the defendant's risk could be managed in the community. This is the point, right? The community always cover it up. They always cover for their own. These men will disappear back with no consequences into their ethnic enclaves. The women, the wives, mothers, cousins, often the same thing, of the perpetrators know what's going on, and according to 2013 Muslim women's reports, Yasmin Alabhai Brown's writing in 2011 to 2013, to right up to the very present day, where the sisters of one of the rapists went live with him on TikTok while he was in prison, denying that he had done the crime and accusing him of being a racist cover-up. They all know about it, and they're just not interested because the victims are white girls. Or they blame the girls for saying, by Allah, have you seen how they dress? Basically, they were asking for it. We cannot live around these people. These people hate us. They will excuse child abuse based on race and religion. I've skipped over too quickly about this Egyptian migrant, right? So what he did, he sexually assaulted the woman in the street. The victim was later found wandering while distressed, confused, upset, and shocked by two tourists who attempted to escort her home. He initially denied the rape and sexual assault, but changed his pleas to guilty days before a trial was due to take place, because they have no remorse. They don't have a conscience. Very few have an internal monologue. Instead, they try to lie, cheat, and steal to advantage themselves, their family, and their clan. Our justice system is incapable of accommodating these cultural and ethnic differences. And the two are interlinked, because if you have centuries of cousin marriage, you can't think individualistically. These people do not belong here. And he said he's terrified of being deported. Gotta wonder what he did back in his home country, don't you? Why should he be our problem? He was caught on CCTV, by the way. So he would have been informed ahead of trial that they had him banged to rights. Just inhuman. Absolutely inhuman. Then there's another one. Now, I hate to go to Spiked Online for this, but this is a very good write-up by Georgia Mumford, so well done. After a 5-day trial at Birmingham Crown Court, and this was on the 27th of January, a Pakistani national was found guilty of raping an 18-year-old girl in Nottinghamshire. Shiraz Malik met his victim at Sutton Lawn Park on the 29th of June last year. The girl had been drinking with a male friend and was drunk when she was introduced to Malik. He was among a larger group of older men. At some point in the evening, Malik guided the intoxicated young woman to a secluded spot where he raped her. The jury was told he grabbed the victim by the hair and neck, as well as physically striking her during the attack. Malik, who needed a Pashto interpreter... Again, it's just an extra insult that we're even paying for the court proceedings to be interpreted to foreign sex criminals, so they understand what is going on, to the extent that their IQ allows them to. He claimed the sex was consensual. He claimed the girl said, "I really liked you and I really enjoyed it." This stands in stark contrast with a Snapchat message she sent her friend following the assault. "Please help, I can't cope, I feel like killing myself." The jury returned with guilty verdicts on 2 counts of rape and a not guilty verdict on a third. Don't know why. As it transpired, the victim had already been raped once that evening by the time Malik had attacked her. Another man in the group, a friend of Malik's, had led her away under the guise of helping her find a toilet. He then forcibly violated her before delivering her back to the group. The first suspect has not been caught and fled abroad. This is a community crime. They share the same women. They know what they're doing. They have no shame. And by sharing the same women, they have alibis for one another, and they engage in a conspiracy of silence and denial about the crimes they've committed. And again, this came up in the 2013 Muslim Women's Report, which I'll have to cover next week when I talk about my contributions to the Rape Gang Inquiry and the broader Rape Gang Inquiry. Which, by the way, Nazir Asfal, the former head of the Crown Prosecution Service, who sits on Twitter all day now deflecting to white sex predators, and Sadiq Khan wrote the foreword to, so they know what was in this. In it, there is an account from a younger Muslim lad who said, bro, one of my friends came to me and said, for your 16th birthday, I've got a surprise for you, bro. So we went to a house and there was a woman in there who was being gang raped. And we all took turns. That's how these freaks think. That is how these people think. It is endemic to the community. This is a community-wide problem. They just shouldn't be here. Then there's another Afghan national who's done it again. And again, this is just such a long list. It's just such a depressing long list. He was charged with kidnap, rape, and sexual assault. This is Najibullah Arab, 39, kidnapping and raping a woman in Oxfordshire. Charged, of course. Been charged with a sexual assault of another woman on Cane Lane in a nearby grove on January the 21st. He's an Afghan national who lives in the grove. Police previously said the victim of the Mabley Way attack, a woman in her late teens, was walking home at 11:15 p.m. The man led her to an area behind Mabley Way, where he fled the scene on a bike. The Cane Lane assault occurred at 9:30 p.m. when a woman in her late 20s was approached by a man. He followed and sexually assaulted her. Thames Valley are looking into another assault on Oxford Lane on January the 24th. He was arrested on suspicion of this offence and remains under investigation but has not been charged. So a serial Afghan sex predator yet again in the country. It's just so many of them. It's just so... They should never have been here in the first place to commit these crimes. And yet, the entire British establishment opposes removing them. This includes, for example, figures like our old friend Danny Finkelstein, who is still writing pieces about me in the Times, behind a block, who is opposed to removing people from Britain because he is ideologically committed to a multi-ethnic society. We've always been a multi-ethnic society because we've had multiple indigenous ethnicities, Danny. But your insistence on a multi-ethnic society in that, well, immigration has happened and now we have to deal with it, means that men like this get to stay here. Should they stay here forever? Should we have any of these people here so that they can commit these kinds of attacks? The onus is on you to make the positive case for it. You don't just get to call people names and expect them to shut up anymore because the crimes are too numerous. They're too frequent and they're too heinous. Another one across the country, right? So these are the two teenagers. This is Isra Nayazal, 17, pleaded guilty to raping a teenage girl, having arrived in the UK in November 2024. And then Jana Zeb also led the girl away from her friends and was caught on video covering her mouth as she tried to scream. The Daily Mail have created an entire map of this stuff. I mean, this is the guy that attacked a woman in the nightclub, led her away from Cardiff. These, of course, are all the videos that sex traffickers, people traffickers, are using to entice people to come over to the UK with the promise of easy access to girls for sex. Another guy attacked a woman in a nightclub. So these are the two teenagers. Now, their identities were not going to be released because originally the police were afraid this was going to cause riots. And this is what we have to live in the UK now. We're constantly on the precipice of public disorder. That is the casus belli for widespread censorship of these horrific crimes that the government is causing, and they're censored by the police because the police want to maintain community tensions. Cohesion, rather. Police want to maintain community cohesion, which is the exact same excuse they used to cover up the rape gangs for decades, and are still doing it. Jahanzeb made 3 failed attempts to cross the channel before succeeding in January when he was rescued by the Coast Guard after his inflatable broke down. Niyazal arrived in the UK in November of 2024. They were living in taxpayer-funded accommodation at the time of the rape. The judge said it was in the public interest to lift the ban on naming the pair despite their barristers claiming it could lead to widespread public disorder. Jahanzeb rang his friend Niyazal telling him to come quick, and they forced the girl to perform oral sex after Jahanzeb had abducted her and took her to a secluded area in a park. During the attack, the girl begged a woman passing by for help, but the woman didn't come to her aid. Right, well, you've got to live with that on your conscience, love. She eventually escaped and was helped by someone who called the police. Footage showed the girl screaming, "Help, I don't want to go to the park." Jahanzeb was sentenced to 10 years and 8 months in custody, and the judge recommended he be deported when he's freed. Niyazal was given 9 years and 10 months. They shouldn't have got different sentences, and they should both be hanged. And again, a fatal stabbing in Islington. Adam Henry was treated for stab wounds but died in hospital. Look at this man, just a man the police want to speak to. Doesn't need to be here. They're trying to trace a man called Abdel Derdor. Good British name. Then there's a Moroccan, Ayman Yunusi, who was freed after he was filming up women's skirts, and he claimed he thought it was legal here. No jail time. Okay. Then there was the attempted abduction in Swindon, right outside the Lotus Eaters studio. Again, it's just on, and I know this is laborious. I'm sorry for the dour mood of this stream, but it needs to be a historical artifact that we all remember. This is Abdulwamal Ibrahim Adam. And thank God for the passers-by who intervened in this, by the way. The heroes, they got off the bus and stopped him abducting a 17-year-old girl from Swindon town centre. He tried to grab her and drag her across the road. The bus then pulled up in the brand new bus station. Passengers got off to help the girl and chase the attacker. They've now been commended. It says, Adam, 28 of Swindon. Well, he's not of fucking Swindon, is he? He's now going to send an extended sentence totaling 7 years. We've got to pay for him for 7 years. Brilliant. The woman who filled Adam and the man who got off the bus to stop him were awarded the highest sheriff award by the judge. They'll receive £500 each as a recognition of their courage. I'm not going to begrudge them receiving £500 from the taxpayer, but yet again, this is more money we wouldn't be spending if this man were never here in the first place. So then there's the schools. So the schools are just a war zone, right? And I've included this one because this one's just happened. And as far as I know, this kid's English. But there is a heinous trend of kids just stabbing each other. And it's not because of adolescence. So this kid, Cian Moulton, again, as far as we know, English, stabbed Leo Ross in the stomach in Yardley Wood. Stabbed a 12-year-old boy to death. He didn't even know him. Unprovoked, random attack. So parents are now grieving the loss of their son. Never needed to happen. This kid should have been in some sort of youth offenders institute. The parents should be prosecuted for their negligence, because we'll see his rap sheet. But I'm just including this to show, even if remigration happens, it's not going to be every problem solved. There's still some issues going on. But it is most of them. But I thought it was necessary to include this just because horror's just happening every day. This kid was given a life sentence, but told he would be eligible for parole after 13 years. The victim was 12 years old. He is barely in prison for the same number of years that the victim's parents got to have their son on the earth. Never let him out. Turns out he has an extensive criminal record. So he was already excluded from mainstream education and even a specialist pupil referral unit after breaking a teacher's nose and bringing a knife into class. It's just the white axe of Rudicabana, right? He then threw a brick through the window of a newsagent's in 2024. In days before killing the 12-year-old, he kept attacking elderly women in the Hall Green area. This is just like a character from Eden Lake. He told one elderly woman, pushing her into a ditch next to a river, "I tried to drown you, but now I'm going to kill you instead," before striking her several times with her own walking stick. The day before the killing, he pushed a 72-year-old woman to the ground. She suffered broken ribs in the attack and had to have hip replacement surgery. Half an hour before he stabbed Leo, the 12-year-old, he pushed a 79-year-old woman as she walked alone in the park. What? We're allowing complete freaks and psychos free reign in our civilization. You know, Britain used to have, what was it, like 2% of the population every year, and it just weeded the crazies out for a very long time. We're going to inevitably go back to that. Because things as they stand are just untenable. They're alien to the English character. Nobody wants this. It's too horrifying. And this is why Ratcliffe came out and said what he did. Not the specific case, but the broader trend of just feeling dispossessed of your own country by people who you are paying to stay here, who are committing the most heinous crimes imaginable. And of course, it's not just this instance. Then there was the stabbing at a North London school. So, look how the BBC reported on this, right? Boy arrested for murder, attempted murder, after 2 pupils were stabbed at a school. 13-year-old boy, just a boy, tried to stab 2 of his classmates. 12-year-old boy and a 13-year-old boy have both been stabbed. They're in hospital. Counter-terror officers are leading the investigation, but it's not been declared a terror incident. Why were counter-terror officers leading the investigation into this? Maybe it's because he was yelling Allahu Akbar when he was doing it. Seems to be a pretty important detail. Sources say he wasn't a pupil at Kingsbury High, though there's been some conflicting reporting on that. And then what he did, he scarpered off to a mosque. So Daily Mail reported this here. Can't be named for legal reasons. But he's been charged with filming himself attempting the stabbing of 2 of the children. And also charged with spraying a noxious substance at a 3rd child. Ant repellent. So trying to poison them as well. And then it says, defendant left the school and remained undetected for around 3 hours. The prosecutor said he sought refuge in a mosque speaking to an imam. He was crying. They know. It's endemic to the community. They know. And this is important, right? Taj Hargey's spoken about this. Oxford imam who's sort of been a whistleblower on the rape gangs. I've written about this before. The number of mosques that have been influenced by the Muslim Council of Britain, which according to the UK government in 2015 is a front group for the Muslim Brotherhood. The number of mosques that are Deobandi, which is a 19th century Islamic splinter group, founded in Deoband, which is just outside of New Delhi in India, as a direct ethnic resistance to the British Empire. The amount of mosques that are preaching that non-Muslims and white people are inferior and to be abused, that if you rape a white child, you will get into heaven. It's prolific across the country. There shouldn't be a single mosque in Britain. Not worth the risk. Sorry, we gave religious tolerance a try, didn't pan out. Turns out, you know, those civil wars between Christian factions were hard enough to deal with, rather than importing the Salafist and Wahhabist prejudices of a 7th century death cult. Sorry, tried for too long, not worth it. And the mentality of these imams, and I don't know if this particular imam did anything wrong, but the odds aren't. The odds favour speculation. The mentality of these imams is best identified by Ed Hussein's book Among the Mosques. I covered this in my How the Third World Thinks video, but he spoke to a Bradford imam and he just said, look, my congregation put a lot of pressure on me, particularly the young ones. We know according to the Manchester sources Ed spoke to, the congregation is being even more radicalised, reciprocally, not just by the imams, but by the sons of refugees and asylum seekers from Syria, Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, etc. But the Bradford imam said to Ed Hussein, who was protesting, saying, look, if we keep this up, we're all going to get expelled from the country. The imam said, I just tell my congregation who ask when the caliphate's coming, bide your time, read your Quran, get jobs in government, and the caliphate will come. We shouldn't be allowing racial hatred and religious sedition to be imported and sequestered in various ethnic colonies across our country, and then have some members break ranks and go and stab students, I think these kids were Jewish, at schools, while yelling Allahu Akbar. Shouldn't be happening. Shouldn't have happened with Axel Rudick-Barner, shouldn't have happened with all the migrant sex attacks, shouldn't have happened with this kid, shouldn't have happened with Harvey Wilgoose either. So, the inquest has found that the school and social services could have stopped Harvey Wilgoose's killer. Harvey Wilgoose, 15, was murdered at All Saints Catholic High School by Mohammed Umar Khan. This shouldn't surprise people, because unfortunately of the changing demographics in the country make admissions to Catholic schools from non-Catholics almost inevitable. But what the fuck is a kid named Mohammed doing at All Saints Catholic High School? Harvey Wilgoose would still be alive if this child and his family were not in the country. Anyway, Harvey's parents were obviously distraught. Here's Mohammed Khan. There were too many red flags about Khan that were not acted on, Caroline Wilgoose said. There's a knife problem out there. The one place children should feel safe is the school. After pupils reported in October 2024 that Khan had previously carried a knife and brought a BB gun on a school trip, staff carried out a search but failed to investigate further, complete a risk assessment, or put a safety plan in place. Of course, they wouldn't want to be called racist, as the teachers that were monitoring Axel Rudakabana were. In December 2024, when an axe was found in his bag off-site, police were informed, but no in-school follow-up occurred. Just throwing kids to the wolves. Like, this is the reason why, my family pending. I don't want to send my kids to school now. They're trying to make it impossible to home educate your kids. But I don't want to send them in. I'm not doing it. I'm not putting them at risk of being killed. Speaking of axes and young people, do you remember this? Do you remember this video that was going viral last year? So this is Lola Moir in Dundee, who was brandishing a knife and an axe to a Bulgarian man who was filming her. And we all remember that this became a bit of a symbol of just exactly the danger that white girls are in around Britain. And it was called a hoax by bad faith parties that we'll get to in a moment. Well, I wanted to do a follow-up on this, because there's a statement from Police Scotland, of course. They said, "We're aware of misinformation being shared on social media in relation to an incident where a Bulgarian couple were approached by youths." So the youths are at fault. And of course, she was charged with being in possession of offensive weapons. Well, there's another update. It's on the 6th of February. They've now been charged and are in court for assaulting the two girls. This is Ilya Belov and Nadezhda Belova. They're accused of repeatedly seizing and pulling another of the girls by the hair, dragging her to the ground and punching her in the head, and making sexual remarks to them before seizing one of the girls. Isn't it interesting that a rape gang was just convicted in Dundee only a few months ago? This guy was what was he, a gypsy gangster he was marketing himself as, with an AK-47 tattooed on his neck? Bulgarian. I'm sure he's just ethnically Bulgarian, and not of the same ethnic group that just so happens to originate from the Indian subcontinent, India and Pakistan, that have made their way across Europe in the last few centuries, and are known for scamming people, stealing from people, pickpocketing people, and raping children. I'm sure it's just a major coincidence. Which is great, now that these people are in court, now that it was all on camera, it's great that someone like Freddie Sayers repeatedly doubled down on saying, is there any actual evidence the 14-year-old girl brandishing an axe and a knife was bravely defending her 12-year-old sister from migrant aggressors? What about the ongoing court proceedings, Freddie? And then he responded, and just as I suspected, the whole story of this girl being attacked by a migrant is confected propaganda slop. Good day to all the thousands of morons who amplified it and who piled on me for questioning it. You are completely wrong. You were wrong. As was Kathleen Stock, by the way, brave, tough feminist who was cancelled, really cares about women, who wrote the following piece in Unheard. She joked that after the donations were raised to 5 figures for the girls, that is rather a lot of money for young Lola and Ruby to spend on machetes and iron brew. You think it's funny, do you? Published in Unheard, remember? Unheard. So me, you remember? Person who thinks immigration is too high, that we shouldn't have foreign politicians or state officials because there are too many conflicts of interest, who thinks that Islam is not compatible with Britain. All those things that the majority of the public think. I am beyond the pale. I am so beyond the pale that not only was my debate censored, I deserve to be banned from the physical premises of the Unheard Club and unable to attend any more events where I previously went and asked some questions, which I'm sure would get me in trouble now. So I am beyond the pale, just to be clear, but mocking children who are approached by Bulgarian gangsters who are now up in court on assault charges and making sexually explicit remarks to them, that's fine to publish, as is Freddie Sayers' defense of people who befriended Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, I'm sure most people in the chat probably don't follow Freddie Sayers on Twitter. But if you follow me, you would have seen this today. Freddie Sayers thought it was a great idea to interview someone. And during the discussion, as you can see in this caption, he argued that it was unchristian to say that people were wrong to befriend Jeffrey Epstein. Now, first of all, Freddie Sayers is not Christian. He's gay liberal. So I won't take lectures on what isn't Christian from you, Freddie. But also, turns out, people that befriend people, having known that they have been convicted for soliciting prostitution from a minor and eventually sex trafficking, people who know that that person's been convicted for that, it turns out that they're not doing the virtuous thing and being forgiving by befriending that person. They're actually enabling the worst crime imaginable, which, of course, Christ says in the Gospels, if any of you cause little ones among us to suffer, better that you tie a millstone around your neck and drown yourself in the sea than try and enter the kingdom of heaven. I think it's a suitable punishment. So, actually enabling those sorts of crimes and those immoralities would be the unchristian thing to do. Not knowingly befriending one of the world's most famous paedophiles, Freddie. But I'm so glad that Freddie Sayers is committed to reporting with moral integrity and truth. Because, he still hasn't retracted, for example, the fact that he said this was a massive hoax, because the court proceedings are ongoing. He still doesn't want any discussion of the crimes caused by immigration on this platform, but he is very dedicated to say it's okay to be friends with Jeffrey Epstein. Bit weird. Anyway, speaking of international sex trafficking gangs, we will wrap up soon, and I will address the super chats, hopefully with TTS. Speaking of this, Rupert Lowe's rape gang inquiry has been ongoing, and we have had some of the most horrific revelations that we wish we'd never seen. Today, we found out that there are vans full of girls in dog cages that are being trafficked around the country on drugs. One witness said that she was raped by 600 or 700 different men over the 3 years, predominantly, of course, ethnically Pakistani. Another said that she was brought to a party house, and anywhere between 10 and 20 men were in the house at the time raping children because they were celebrating Eid. Okay. One person said the men were entering the room to rape children like a conveyor belt. And, of course, they were in the communities with these people. They went to school with their rapists. They bumped into them in supermarkets after they were freed from prison without the victims being notified. One of the Oxford grooming gang perpetrators, I believe, is out now, free, probably just roaming Oxford again. Back in the taxi trade, I'm sure. Just. The crimes that are being committed in this country that are being ignored by pretty much every politician and media institution are just inexcusable. BBC, not reporting on this. Most politicians haven't made a statement on it. When Rupert Lowe pointed out that these girls are being trafficked abroad, and they have evidence from the girls, videos and photos of them being trafficked abroad and being brought back. When he brought that up in Parliament, Shabana Mahmood talked about it like it was the past fucking tense. And it's because, of course, it reflects very poorly on her community. I mean, after all, she endorsed a definition of Islamophobia that said that there is a so-called recourse to free speech. There is no right to criticize Islam, and that the rape gangs, the grooming gangs, are just another classic example of Islamophobic tropes. So she is dedicated to instantiating a definition of Islamophobia which would censor any conversation about this abuse. But the reason I brought this up, the reason I've been going through these examples, this is the kind of stuff you would read in ancient Assyria. This is the kind of stuff that you would read the Umayyad Caliphate doing. This is the kind of stuff that you would read going on in a gulag, or during the Cultural Revolution under Mao, or, most importantly, during the Holocaust. Because we talk an awful lot about the atrocities of the 20th century, particularly those of Nazi Germany. It has become the gravity well around which all of our politics revolves. And we constantly hear that the treatment of Jewish people in our civilization is, as Gawain Towler wrote, a canary in the coal mine for how our civilization might go. And I think I speak for everyone here. Nobody wants to see innocent people, Jews, whites, whatever, massacred like they were in Manchester or on Bondi Beach, Hanukkah. But canary in the coal mine as I pointed out here, we're pretty fucking far from canary in the coal mine. There is an inquiry ongoing at the moment, which, bar Robert Jenrick and David Bull being asked about it live on television, Reform UK have ignored because of a petty squabble with Rupert Lowe, because the EUs have reported him to the police. Do you not think that the industrial-scale rape, torture, trafficking and murder of white children, of English children, Scottish children, Welsh children in the case of Telford, do you not think that might be a bit more important than Westminster gossip, than personal vendettas? And do you not think that it's a bit more important, rather than talking about the hypothetical canaries in the coal mine, do you not think it's a bit more important to talk about the ongoing Holocaust-style atrocities being visited on children currently in over 50 towns and cities in the country? I think that might command a bit more fucking attention. Yes, the atrocities of the 20th century were horrible. People were systematically exterminated for their race. People were raped. Children doesn't even bear thinking about. If it was horrible then, I would say it's even more horrible now, knowing it is currently going on, and not only our government actively facilitating it, but they are persecuting anyone trying to stop it. And anyone who is not paying attention to this, I don't know how you sleep at night, man. Like, ever since I found out about this, it has incensed me. This entire issue. I've been trying to cover it for years. And I've been doing it on the periphery. I've not been doing nearly the great work that Sammy Woodhouse or Marlon West and his daughter Fiona, Adam Wren, Charlie Peters has been doing, Guy Dampier. Like, I'm just reading reports and drudging up quotes and comparing them to scripture and bits of history, right? I'm doing all of this from the relative safety and comfort of my study. So if I can do it, you fuckers can do it too. It's just absolutely inexcusable that not just people in the enemy faction, people in the government who we expect to betray us, who we know are facilitating this, but people on our own ostensible side, for petty or political reasons, are not paying attention to this. And I know all of this stuff that is being uncovered in this inquiry will be used as the casus belli to prosecute people and deport some too, should a Reform government come to power. Because, for example, Sarah Pochin, former barrister, who is probably tipped at this point to be Reform's Shadow Chancellor, Shadow Justice Secretary, unless there's a better candidate, by the time they win government, probably will be the Justice Secretary. She has already promised a full-scale inquiry. And to be fair to Sarah Pochin, she's very on side. Like, she understands the demographic issues. She is to the right of her own party's rhetoric on many things, so I believe that she will do it. And Sarah has always had a cordial relationship with Rupert, so I'm not throwing shade at Sarah Pochin at all. I think she's a decent MP, actually. But the fact that the party have a cordon sanitaire about engaging with this inquiry despite being approached ahead of time to do so, inexcusable. They're just as bad as the BBC on this particular front. And it's even more inexcusable knowing that they're going to draw upon the findings to actually do something when they get into government. How about helping out now? Because you promised to do that last year when Farage said he was going to fund private prosecutions and his own private inquiry. Rupert actually did it, and he doesn't have a headquarters in Millbank Tower. He doesn't have billions coming in from Iranian and Indian billionaires. Again, I don't want this to seem like a wholesale attack on the decent people in Reform, who I still meet with. I'm still friendly with. There are still good people trying to make the best of an imperfect situation with that party that is likely to win the next government. But on this issue, man, it's just inexcusable. You're sitting there writing, because, for context, Reform launched its Jewish Alliance event, and it was I'm Spartacused by a bunch of left-wing Jewish activists who were saying, if you deport one of us, you're going to deport all of us. A struggle for one group or one minority is a struggle for all. This is what you get, by the way, when you end up inviting a member of the Israeli Labour Party into your Friends of Israel group, right? You basically invite left-wing Jews in. Sorry, it's not a good strategy, right? And I know there are a bunch of right-wing Jews who don't like Reform for this reason. You guys needlessly split your own support base. I understand that Gwen Towler wanted to write a piece saying, whoa, anti-Semitism's on the rise in the right, because the moment we announced this thing, we suddenly got people pouring in saying, we're Zog captured. Fine, Gwen Towler is a self-avowed liberal civic nationalist. I expect that he's going to write this piece. But to write this piece with no attention paid to the rape gang inquiry. Not good enough. Not good enough. So, if you want a picture of the crimes that go on in these communities, we mentioned Eid earlier. The Eid celebration that was a cause to rape English children. Well, there has now been another conviction. One girl was raped and tortured by her own family, as her father, mother, brothers and grandfather and uncle are jailed for nearly 100 years. The girl can't be identified for legal reasons, but she endured torture at the hands of her own relatives from the age of 6 in her home in West Sussex. Her mother bound, beat and locked the youngster in a cupboard where she was left without food for days. She also burnt her with hot wax and rubbed salt into the wounds. The girl's sister was also abused at the home. A jury convicted the 6 relatives of 39 counts of rape, sexual assault, cruelty, false imprisonment, and perverting the course of justice. The father, 44, was smirking and joking throughout the hearing and said, "You shouldn't be a judge, you should retire." They are remorseless. It is exactly the same as the Rochdale ringleader tearing out his chest hair during the court proceedings, accusing the court of conspiring with Theresa May and the BNP, saying Pakistanis were the supreme race. And when that rant didn't work, after he'd already pled not guilty and was convicted on all counts, he was then smiling as the verdict was read out. These people will do whatever they can to evade accountability because they ultimately think what they're doing is right. The reason I bring this up is one of the sexual assaults was carried out by our grandfather when he visited for Eid celebrations. These people shouldn't be here. We shouldn't be accommodating these festivals, especially if they see the celebration as an excuse to engage in, frankly, what the Prophet was doing to his slave girls, bondwomen, that which his right hand possesses, and his 6-year-old bride. Mother was jailed for 10 years and 6 months. Grandfather was jailed for 9 years. Eldest brother started raping his sister when she was 6 years. Yeah, I can't. And so, we know this is endemic to the community because there is a Labour politician who helped her son try to escape the police when he had videoed himself raping a teenage girl and had threatened to slit her throat, sent her the video back to her, and had threatened to kill her. This is a former Labour mayor of Bracknell Forest. This is Nahid Ijaz. So these are the senior Pakistani politicians. Remember, they know. They all know what is going on. The head of the Ramadan Foundation in 2016 said the Pakistani community know what is going on and they bury their heads in the sand because they don't want to be seen as siding with the white enemy. They know, and they will help their sons, their brothers, their cousins, their fathers get away with it. Even after the verdict is read out, some of the children yell out in court, "I love you, Dad," for attacking girls of the same age as them. They know, and they cannot stay here. They can't be allowed in politics, they can't be allowed in country. They do not need to be here. He was the mayor's consort during his mother's time in office. He gave a 15-year-old girl vodka laced with MDMA, and she blacked out. She then woke up on the back seat of his car with no clothes on, and he showed her a 2-minute video of him choking her and slapping her in the face. So he was sexually violating her. During the girl's police interview, she said Khan had told her he was the mayor's consort and he would slit her throat if she told anyone about the attack in June 2024. Wonder how many other local politicians, remember the Lord of Rotherham was involved in raping children, wonder how many other local politicians and police officers, community elders know this is going on and not just turn a blind eye but proactively help in covering it up. When the police arrived at their home in the early hours of September 12, 2024, it was Jazz who answered the door to the police. So she opened the door and she said in Urdu to her son to hide his mobile phone. So she knew about the video. She knew what he'd done. She didn't turn him in. She helped him hide it. She didn't care. She didn't care because the victim wasn't one of her own. So, trial ended in a conviction. Guilty verdict, already delivered. No sentence given yet. She's not the only insane local politician, by the way, from Pakistani Muslim community. A convicted terrorist is trying to run in Birmingham in a council election. What are we doing? Why are we putting up with this? Why are any of these people here? They shouldn't be. They should be sent home immediately. Shahid Butt says he's the ideal candidate to unite a divided community and city and push back against the far right. He's obviously running as an independent Muslim candidate. He had previously encouraged the city's Muslim youth to work out at the gym and learn to fight and hold their ground against disbelievers. Oh, by the way, he's a previous informant to the Prevent program. So, you know all that reporting about the ideological capture by Muslim activists of counter-terror and Prevent? Yeah, he's one of them. He's one of the people that's fed into Prevent guidelines. You know, convicted jihadist telling the government what they should and shouldn't be focusing on regarding Muslim terrorism. Unrepentant jihadist, by the way. Just like, of course, Jeffrey Epstein, who people befriended and then, you know, Freddie Sayers defended them befriending him. Not very Christian to defend unrepenting sinners, Freddie. This guy is an unrepenting radical. Because he says that all the charges were fake. He says his conviction, and by the way, his conviction was on terrorism charges in 1999 because he was part of a terrorist enterprise conspiring to terrorize Yemen. He was found guilty of forming an armed gang and conspiring to bomb the British consulate, an Anglican church, and a Swiss-owned hotel in Yemen. He's always proclaimed his innocence, and he said he confessed under severe torture. He was later jailed for 5 years. Why are we allowing any foreigner to run for any position in the country? The same group was linked to Abu Hamza, formerly of Finsbury Park Mosque. Brilliant. And so Talk decided to interview him, and he said that Hamas is a legitimate group. October the 7th was a reflection of what was going on in the region. These people are promising to do the same to us. The rape gangs are already doing the same to English children. The government doesn't care. Instead, they cry foul more about football team managers who say it feels like we're being colonized than stopping the horrors of colonization being inflicted upon us. All of these people, all of these lives would not be ruined. Women like Rhiannon Skye-Whyte would still be alive. But instead, the government insists on continuing to provide demographic fodder not just for our replacement, but for our violent dispossession of our own country. And so, how do we move forward? So this is the framing. Andy, who's a very good account, by the way, put out the following. I want you to internalize this. Because this is the battle we are locked in for the fate of our country right now. Everyone on the right, he says the right, but I think that's the majority of the public, right, has been super clear. Don't let these men in, deport them once they're here, execute them when they commit rape or murder, change any and all laws if necessary. Everyone on the left, and this is the establishment right, the government, the civil service, most media apparatuses, has been super clear. Play down the crimes as much as possible, highlight cases of crimes by white men, pretend not to understand per capita, push for as many additional migrants as possible, obfuscate, gaslight, lie, deny, hide, DARPA, etc. You can only reach the conclusion they want it to happen. You can only reach the conclusion that they are allergic to the framing of colonization because that is the express goal, and it is currently happening. You can only assume that the government is content to have all these lives ended, to have all these children raped, to build atop their bones the multicultural utopia that will never happen. And so despite the depressing subject matter, we have to keep documenting it because we have to understand the psychological scarring that we are suffering collectively as a people, and we have to know our enemies. And the enemies are anyone who, whenever they are confronted with all of these crimes that I've listed to you today, The enemies are, well, what about white men? Well, it's not all of them. Well, they're here now, so we can't do anything about it. Anyone who is deflecting, denying, downplaying, obfuscating, or insisting these people have to be here, they are your enemy. Anyway, I'm sorry for the very depressing subject matter. Hopefully we can now get to your super chats, and I hope that that's worked.
Anyone who is honest about Islamic history is not surprised by any of this. It's baked into the religion. Raymond Ibrahim's books talk about it.
Correct. I'm releasing the materials that I compiled as an 80-page report for the Rape Gang Inquiry, which goes into the scriptural justification in Islam for violence against unbelievers, for taking sex slaves, particularly as Raymond Ibrahim has written about before, the people of yellow, women who are fair-skinned and blonde-haired. There's a particular fetish that was satisfied by the original Islamic slave trade. But also, don't underestimate the ethnic component that Islam just maps onto the existing tribal structures that it encountered in the 7th century and is perpetuated through cousin marriage. And I discourage people from thinking it's purely an ideological problem. It's not a problem of, just because these men renounce Islam, we can all live together, cheek by jowl. Thousands of years of incest and tribalism are not overcome by a declaration of allegiance to another faith or a set of liberal platitudes, I'm afraid. I'm sorry. Hopefully Christianity can touch that part of the world. It's a civilizing force. Hopefully they can be left on their own for a few hundred years to develop, and we'll check on them later. And perhaps we might eventually have some kind of positive cultural exchange with them. Demographic replacement is never justified. But perhaps we can interact as nations in a few hundred years if left to their own devices. But I'm not keen to experiment on that within my borders at the expense of my own people. Thank you very much.
If ye have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. Matthew 17:20. The reckon kist began like a mustard seed.
Very true, and thank you for the donation, sir. I appreciate it. It's generous and nourishing to hear scripture. Go to Mass on Sunday, everyone. This is the only thing that keeps this stuff at bay. A friend who is swimming the Tiber at the moment reminded me that the rosary is the only thing that wards the demons off. And I'm bad with structured prayer. I don't actually find the repetitiveness of the rosary that helpful, but I now just always wear it. Put on the armor of God, etc., etc.
Pope Urban II was not exaggerating what was happening to Christians in the Holy Land in his speech at Claremont.
I haven't actually watched that yet, but I shall give it a look. Yeah, I Claremont location? I would assume so, because it immediately sprung to mind the work of the Claremont Institute. They're doing good work over there, and we need something like their enterprise over in the UK to, again, keep documenting stuff like this, especially as the Ministry of Justice is on the precipice of deleting all the court files. People might not know that, by the way. The government are currently engaged in an attempt to bury any and all knowledge of these crimes by deleting loads of court transcripts. So Rupert Lowe, etc., is in a desperate effort, while also running his inquiry, while also doing all various other hearings on all sorts of other topics that every other party should be doing, including reform. He's desperately trying to save them. We need an institute over in Britain that can start cataloguing these things and keep a database of migrant crime, of the rape gangs, of various transcripts. Adam Wren over at Open Justice is doing as good a job as he can procuring these transcripts and making them public. They should be free for the victims to do with as they wish. They shouldn't have to pay and spend years in litigation trying to procure the transcripts for their own trial after conviction. Inexcusable.
I'm having to take breaks from Rupert's inquiry. It's too much to take. Increasingly hard not to bedpost. Appreciate your work, brother.
Yeah, I agree. This is why I haven't commented too much on the individual findings of the trial. As well, I've been, ill, but quite quietly preparing for yesterday's hearing session. I hope I contributed something useful. I think there's going to be some footage of my contributions coming out next week. I'm not sure what the release plan is, but Honestly, I don't get nervous about anything, especially not anything camera related, but that was really daunting. Because I didn't want to do it just for the sake of doing it. I wanted to do it, hopefully, because I contributed something worthwhile to the investigation. And I hope I got it right. But the stuff that's coming out of that is just horrors beyond comprehension. And just remember, all of this continues to be enabled because people put an ideological desire to deny differences between groups and a personal aversion to being called racist over and above the safety and dignity of children. There is no place in hell low enough for such people. If that's all, ladies and gentlemen, that seems to be our last super chat. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm sorry that this was such a downbeat stream, but I've been compiling these links for weeks now, and I just felt that it needed to be recorded for the sake of posterity, so that we all know what's being done to us. A video out soon. Thank you all for your support. You can find me on X, on Substack, on YouTube. Until then, take care, God bless, and goodbye.